wants to go swimming? Nothing unites the world like water. Look at my face. Right over the Pacific Ocean. Lots of water. Over 70% of my surface is water. And 60%, that's over half, of your body is water. Everyone in the world needs water, not only for drinking, but transportation, as a source of food, and a way to have fun. Water is so important to people that every culture around the world originally sprang up around a source of water. Naturally, every culture around the world has told stories about water too. Let's start with a story from a place entirely surrounded by water. My nose! Those, you see, are the islands of Hawaii. Hawaii is now one of the United States, but before that, the people of Hawaii built their own culture, all about their water. They invented surfing. They fished for their food. And they told stories about the creatures who lived in the waters around them, like this one. Punia and the King of Sharks, a Hawaiian folktale, adapted by Wardlaw, pictures by Felipe Davalos. Beneath the rippling island water, near the shadows of a cave, lurked 10 great sharks and the Shark King who ruled them. The sharks never swam far from shore, for the cave was filled with fat lobsters, red as sunset, sweet as coconut. "We must keep these lobsters for ourselves," said the King of Sharks, "and guard this cave from fishermen." So they did, devouring anyone who ventured into the sea. In a village nearby lived a boy named Punia. Once, his father had dared to fish in the lobster cave, only to be eaten by the sharks. Now Punia and his mother had no one to fish for them. Day after day they ate only yams, which grew in the small garden behind their hut. And of course his mother served poi, the bland, thick paste Punia made by steaming taro roots in the imu and then pounding them with a rock. Punia's mother never complained, but once in a while he heard her whisper, "Oh, if we only had a tender lobster to eat." Punia said nothing, but as he licked the sticky poi from his fingers, his stomach rumbled in agreement. One day Punia wandered along the jagged cliff above the lobster cave. He gazed into the clear, mint-blue sea and saw that the sharks were sleeping. Punia smiled, for suddenly he had a plan. Leaning over the water, he spoke in a loud voice. "Oh ho, look at this! The sharks are fast asleep. I, Punia, can dive into the waves and swim quick as a shrimp to their cave. I will scoop a fat lobster into each hand, and my mother and I shall have a tasty dinner tonight." "Did you hear that?" whispered the King of the Sharks. He nudged the others awake and grinned, his sharp teeth glistening white as bone. "Let us race to the spot where Punia dives, then eat him as we ate his father." Punia picked up a stone and heaved it as far as he could. Splunk! Sharks raced toward the stone, thinking it was the boy. In a flash, Punia dived into the unguarded cave, scooped a lobster into each hand, and swam safely back to shore. "Oh, King of Sharks," Punia taunted, "look what I've stolen from you." He held up the lobsters and shook his wet head, laughing. "We've been tricked," the King of Sharks snapped in anger. "How can this be?" Punia laughed again and said, "Oh ho, it was the shark with the flat nose who told me what to do." When the king heard this, he peered at each of his followers. Punia was right. One of them had a flat nose. "So it was you, Flat Nose, who betrayed us," the king said with a gnash of teeth. "I banish you from this cave forever." With these words, the King of Sharks and the 9 he ruled gave Flatnose a sharp nip on the tip of his tail and chased him out to sea. Chuckling to himself, Punia set off for home, where he and his mother feasted that night on tasty lobster. "You're clever, my son," his mother said, "but beware, you've angered the king of sharks, and he will not be fooled so easily again." Punia only smiled, for already he had another plan. The next day, Punia filled hollow gourds with thick poi. He placed the gourds with care in a large basket and carried it to the cliffs above the lobster cave. "Oh, King of Sharks," Punia called, "I come to make amends for the terrible trick I played. See what I bring? A magic feast prepared by the kahuna, our sorcerer. One bite will make you fiercer than the sun at noon. 2 bites and you shall grow stronger than 4,000 sharks, plus 1. "That is a generous gift to redeem such a small trick," the king replied, suspicious. "Ah," said Punia, "but my mother and I are starving. I humbly ask, oh great fish, that you allow me 2 more lobsters from your cave." The king pretended to consider a moment. "Very well," he said at last, but to his followers he whispered, "Let us eat of the kahuna's magic, and then when Punia dives into the cave, we'll eat him as we ate his father." "Here's your feast," cried Punia. With that, he turned the basket upside down. Gourds tumbled into the sea. Splunk, splunk, sploosh! Instantly, the shark snapped at the gourds, crushing them with one crunch. Punia dived into the water. The sharks tried to bite him, but their mouths would not open. Their teeth were stuck fast together with the glue-like poi. While they joggled their heads and bumped their snouts, Punia swam into the cave, scooping a fat lobster with each hand. The sharks raced after him, but by the time the poi dissolved and the sharks could open their jaws again, Punia had already swum safely back to shore. "Tricked again!" the king roared. "How can this be?" Punia laughed and said, "Oh, it was the shark with the gray belly who told me what to do." King of Sharks peered at his followers. Punia was right. One had a gray belly. "You, gray belly, are a traitor. As punishment, I banish you from this cave forever." With these words, the King of Sharks and the 8 he ruled nipped Gray Belly on the tip of his tail and chased him out to sea. Punia chuckled and headed home, where he and his mother feasted on tasty lobster. "You're clever, my son," his mother said, "but beware. Twice you have angered the king. His rage will make him ferocious. Only Mano, the great shark god, could steal from him now." Punia just smiled, for already he had another plan. The next morning, Punia took his father's papaheanalu from the canoe house. He oiled the wooden surfboard black with kukui nuts. Then on the underside he painted 2 blazing red eyes and a cruel mouth, and he laid the board in the sun to dry. Later, board in tow, he set off for the sea. The board was heavy and long, and Punia struggled, lugging and tugging his way down the grassy path. But at last he reached the shore. Punia gazed into the depths. The sharks were fast asleep. He paced 100 steps up the beach, away from the lobster cave. Then he waded into the water, eased himself onto the surfboard, and paddled, swift but quiet, out to the distant waves. He caught the largest one and leapt to his feet, balancing with arms outstretched like the wings of a soaring bird. As the wave carried him closer to the lobster cave, Punia cried in a booming voice, "I am Mano, god of sharks! All who are loyal shall bow before me!" The king and his followers awoke and gazed up. A long shadow with blazing red eyes and a cruel mouth was passing overhead. "It is he! It is Mano!" cried the king of sharks. "Bow down, I command you!" Instantly, each shark pointed its snout into the sandy bottom of the sea. At the same moment, Punia dived off his board. He swam quick as a shrimp to the cave, scooped a fat lobster into each hand, and started back to shore. Just then the king lifted his gaze to take a forbidden peek at the shark god. "That is not Mano," he shouted. "See, he has no fins, no tail, and his eyes, they fade in water. It's the boy's doing." When Punia heard this, he began swimming faster, thrashing through the surf. The shark saw him and gave chase, but Punia was too quick. He found the surfboard wedged against a rock, and still clutching the lobsters, scrambled on top of it. As the king's mouth almost closed around the boy's foot, a wave caught the board and pushed Punia safely into shore. "Tricked again?" the king of sharks raised. "How can this be?" Punia laughed and said, "Oh, it's the shark with the crooked fin who told me what to do." "Traitors!" the king shouted, his tail swishing in anger. "I'm surrounded by traitors. As punishment, I banish you all from this cave forever." With these words, the king nipped the tails of the sharks he rolled and chased them out to sea. Punia whistled home with his lobsters that night. Only the king of sharks remained. "There's no one left to betray me," the king thought. "Tomorrow I'll not leave the mouth of this cave, no matter what I hear, no matter what I see. Then when Punia dives into the water, I shall eat him, as I ate his father." Early the next morning, before the sun crept up, Punia's mother watched as he set off to the cliff with several kappa claws rolled under his arm. "You're clever, my son," she said, "but beware. 3 times you've angered the king. He feels no fear. Only the wrath of volcanoes could frighten him now." Punia smiled, for already he had another plan. Working quietly while the king slept, Punia unrolled several kappa along the cliff's edge. Next, he gathered as many stones as he could find and piled them on top of the claws. Finally, he built a fire. Using sticks, he edged hot coals among the rocks. Then he shouted, "Flee! Flee for your life! The volcano erupts!" With that, Punia lifted the edge of the kappa, dumping stones and coals into the sea. Water churned and hissed. The Shark King awoke to find rock raining all around him. He darted away, then stopped. He ground his teeth. "This is only the work of Punia," he thought. "I shall not move." Punia dumped another cloth into the sea, and then another. "Flee!" he cried. "The volcano!" Rocks tumbled. Water boiled and steamed. Still the king did not move. "He sleeps as deep as the volcano is high," Punia muttered. "Perhaps it will take the noise of one to awaken him." He glanced around and then hurried to a lava boulder, teetering on the cliff's edge. "That will make a fine splash," he thought. Aloud, he shouted again, "The volcano!" Then with a grunt and a groan and a mighty push, Punia sent the boulder tumbling over the edge. But as he did so, he lost his balance. He flailed, snatching at a thick stalk of banana, which grew up from the rocks. He dangled there above the sea, feet kicking, heart thumping like a drum. "Oh-ho!" the king of sharks cried. "Who shall have the tasty dinner now?" He swam beneath Punia and poked his snout out of the water. "You cannot hang there forever, boy. Your arms are limp as seaweed, your fingers slippery as fish." The shark chuckled and opened his jaws and waited. Frightened, Punia kicked again, trying to catch a foothold to scramble up the ledge. Too late! Crack! The stalk broke. Still clinging to it, Punia fell into the shark's mouth. Instantly, he wedged the stalk between the king's teeth to keep the massive jaws from closing. The king of sharks thrashed about, trying to dislodge the stalk. He swam in frenzied circles until Punia grew dizzy. Must get out, Punia thought, but the water around him was inky and deep. Above them, waves dashed against a reef in a froth of white. If he tried to escape now, Punia feared he would drown. Then Punia remembered how easily he'd fooled the sharks. He had an idea. He knew it was his only chance. In a shaky voice, Punia cried, "Oh, if only the king would swim up into the breakers, I could ride safely into shore. But if he heads into the cove, I'm doomed. For when I swim out of his mouth, he will surely bite me, and then I shall drown." The king of sharks heard this. He was very hungry, and so he shrieked out of the depths, past the breakers, and into the cove. But the water there was too shallow for him. The shark stuck in the sand. Punia scrambled out of his mouth and scurried up the beach. "Look!" Punia called to the villagers. "See who's come to visit us! He's not so fearsome now!" The villagers crowded on the shore. The shark looked so foolish, flailing in the sand, his mouth propped open, that they began to laugh. Snap! The shark's jaws finally broke the stalk. "How dare you!" he bellowed. "How dare you laugh? I'm the king of sharks!" "No, you're the king of sand crabs," Punia replied. The villagers laughed harder. "Help me!" the shark said, growing afraid. He struggled weakly under the hot sun. "Help me or I will die!" "That is what you deserve," Punia answered. "But I will help you, under one condition. You must swim far out to sea, and you must never return." "I give you my word," croaked the shark. "Help me, please." Punia nodded. Then he asked the villagers to grab thick sticks and poles to push the shark back into the water. Ever watchful of the sharp teeth, the villagers did so. Without a word, the former king of sharks slipped quickly away, his fin disappearing at last into the distance. The villagers cheered, "To Punia, the new king of sharks!" They crowned him with a wreath of melee leaves and hung many lei around his neck, then hoisted Punia to their shoulders and carried him through the village. A luau was planned in his honor, where maidens danced a hula which told the tale of his courageous deeds. And that night, and always after, the entire village feasted on sweet, tasty lobsters whenever they pleased.
Oh, that greedy king of sharks. Maybe he should have shared the lobsters from the beginning. There's lots of tasty seafood in the ocean, but you cannot drink the ocean's water. Do you know why? Because it is too salty. The people of Korea, that's this peninsula on the southeast corner of Asia, tell a silly story about why there is so much salt in the ocean. It's another story about a greedy person learning his lesson through
Why the Sea is Salty. A Tale from Korea, retold by Rosie Dickins, illustrated by Sarah Rojo. Long ago, the sea wasn't salty like it is today. Once, it tasted sweet. So where did the salt come from? Well, it all began with a magic millstone. This millstone belonged to a great king. Most millstones are used for making flour, but this millstone was different. It made gold, jewels, or several spices, or whatever the king asked for. The king's treasure chests were always full. His food was always delicious, and it was all thanks to his magic millstone. One day a thief heard about the millstone. "I want that," he thought. "It'll make me rich. How can I find out where it's kept?" The thief scratched his head. Then he put on his best clothes and went to the palace. The thief told the guards he'd come from far, far away just to see the palace. A kind guard showed the thief around. "These are the gardens," said the guard. "No millstone here." This is the throne room," said the guard. "No millstone there." "And that is the royal bedroom." "I wonder." "I'm sorry not to see the magic millstone," said the thief. "I suppose it's hidden." "Oh, of course," said the guard with a laugh. "It's the king's greatest treasure." "I bet I can guess where it is," said the thief. "Is it up a chimney?" "No," said the guard. Under the floor?" No," said the guard. "I bet you don't even know where it is," teased the thief. "Yes, I do," said the guard proudly. "It's under the king's bed." "Oh, what a clever hiding place. And I suppose you have to be a great magician to work the millstone." "Oh, no," said the guard. "I've seen the king. You just have to tap it like this, tap, 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 and tell it what you want. The thief left the palace smiling. Thanks for the tour. Later, when no one was looking, he crept back again. He tiptoed into the king's bedroom and reached under the bed. Got it. The thief hid the millstone under his cloak, and he ran away as fast as he could. He ran all the way to the sea. There he leaped into a boat and sailed away. Out at sea, he looked at the millstone. What shall I ask for first? He wondered. Maybe some food would help me think. He got out a bun and he took a big bite. That needs salt. He grinned. I know what to ask for. Tap, tap, tap. I want salt. At once, the millstone began to turn. Bright white salt poured out. It works! The thief put some salt on his bun and munched away happily. Then he fell asleep, dreaming of riches. All night long, the millstone kept turning. The pile of salt grew bigger and bigger and bigger. The thief was woken by something tickling his feet. What's that? He cried. Oh no, it was a huge heap of salt. What shall I do? Stop, he shouted, but the millstone kept turning. That's enough, he yelled, but the millstone kept turning. The salt was very heavy. The boat began to sink, lower and lower. Soon waves were slopping over the side, and still the millstone kept turning. The thief dug through the salt, looking for the millstone, but it was buried too deep. I must stop that millstone. But the millstone kept turning, and the boat sank. Took the magic millstone with it, right to the bottom of the ocean. There it has stayed, pouring out salt to this very day. And that's why the sea is salty. As for the thief, he had to swim home, where an angry king was waiting for him. The end.
Do you know that most of the water on Earth is connected? And the same water has been here for millions of years. If one person poisons the water in one place, that pollution will spread and hurt other people as well.
Since most of the earth is salty, it's extra important that we take care of the fresh water so that everyone has enough to drink. Taking care of the water is an act of kindness to all people.
That reminds me of this Zapotec story from Mexico. The Zapotec people lived in the mountains of what is now Oaxaca in southern Mexico. They had great cities there until the Spanish conquerors tried to drive them away. But the mountains gave the Zapotecs many places to hide from the Spanish, so their culture and their stories still survive today. Since the Spanish, though, were not very good at sharing the land and its resources, you can see why a story about kindness and sharing would be an important story for the Zapotec to tell.
The woman who outshone the sun. The Legend of Lucia Zenteno, from a poem by Alejandro Cruz Martinez, pictures by Fernando Oliveira. The day Lucia Zenteno arrived, everyone in the village was astonished. No one knew where she came from, yet they all saw that she was amazingly beautiful, and that she brought thousands of dancing butterflies and brightly colored flowers on her skirts. She walked softly, but with quiet dignity, her long, unbraided hair flowing behind her. A loyal iguana walked at her side. No one knew who she was or where she'd come from, but they did know that nothing shone as brightly as Lucia Zenteno. Some people said that Lucia Zenteno outshone the sun. Others said that was her glorious hair. It seemed to block out the light. Everyone felt a little afraid of someone so wonderful so strange. There used to be a river that ran by the town, almost the same river that runs by there now. And people said that when Lucia Zenteno went there to bathe, the river fell in love with her. The water rose from its bed and began to flow through her shining black hair. The fish went with it. When Lucia finished bathing, she would sit by the river and comb out her hair with a comb made from the wood of the mesquite tree. And when she did, the water, the fishes, and the otters would flow out of her hair and return to the river once more. The old people of the village said that although Lucia was different from them, she should be honored and treated with respect. She understood the ways of nature, they said. But some people did not listen to the elders. They were afraid of Lucia's powers, which they did not understand. And so they refused to answer Lucia's greetings or offer her their friendship. They called her cruel names and spied on her day and night. Look at her. Lucia did not return the meanness of the people. She kept to herself and continued to walk with her head held high. Her quiet dignity angered some of the people. They whispered that Lucia must be trying to harm them. People became more afraid of Lucia, and so they treated her more cruelly, and finally, they drove her away, out of the village. Lucia went down to the river one last time to say goodbye. As always, the water rose to greet her and began to flow through her glorious hair. But this time, when she tried to comb the river out of her hair, the river wouldn't leave her. So when Lucia Zenteno left the village, the river and the fishes and the otters went with her, leaving only a dry, winding riverbed, a serpent of sand where the water had been. Everyone saw that Lucia Zenteno was leaving, and that the river, the fishes, and the otters were leaving with her. The people were filled with despair. They never imagined that their beautiful river would ever leave them, no matter what they did. For once there had been green trees and cool breezes, now no more rain fell, no birds sang, no otters played. The people and their animals suffered from thirst. People began to understand as never before how much the river, the fishes, and the otters, even the trees and birds, had meant to the village. They began to understand how much the river had loved Lucia Zenteno. The elders said that everyone must search for Lucia and beg her forgiveness. Some people did not want to. They were too afraid. But when the drought continued, everyone finally agreed to follow the elders' advice. And so the whole village set out in search of Lucia. After many days of walking, the people found the iguana cave where Lucia had gone to seek refuge. Lucia was waiting for them, but they could not see her face. She had turned her back to the people. At first, no one dared say a word. Then 2 children called out, "Lucia, we've come to ask your forgiveness. Please have mercy on us and return our river." Lucia Zenteno turned and looked at the people. She saw their frightened, tired faces, and she felt compassion for them. At last she spoke. "I will ask the river to return to you," she said. "But just as the river gives water to all who are thirsty, no matter who they are, so you must learn to treat everyone with kindness, even those who seem different from you." The people remembered how they treated Lucia, and they hung their heads in shame. Seeing that the people were truly sorry for what they had done, Lucia returned with them to the village and began to comb out her hair. She combed out the water, she combed out the fishes, she combed out the otters, and she kept on combing until the river had returned once more where it belonged. The people were overjoyed to have their river again. They poured water over themselves, over their animals. They jumped into the river, and they laughed and cried with happiness. In all the excitement, no one noticed at first that Lucia had disappeared again. When the children asked the elders where she'd gone, the elders replied that Lucia had not really left them. Though they would not be able to see her, she would always be there, guiding and protecting them, helping them to live with love and understanding in their hearts. Let's share the waters together.